Good afternoon. Good evening. How we doing today? How are we doing? Shubham Riley, good to see you all here. How are we all? I hope everybody is doing well on this fine Tuesday afternoon. You're here for the daily copium. That's what we're gonna do. I've got more copium to spread. I've got a fair bit. You may not believe it, but I woke up this morning. And I have not felt so positive about where we're heading in a long time. I have not felt so positive about it in a long time. And that's the truth. That's the truth. That's how I feel. That is how I feel. And there ain't nobody who's going to stop that. Okay? Nobody. That's just how I feel. I felt really good. Maybe it's because I've been drinking enough water and I'm not mentally dehydrated, physically dehydrated, but I've been feeling good, man. I've been feeling really good. I'm feeling really good. I am. And look, the thing is that I will explain myself, but I won't get into arguing about why. I won't get into discussing about why in too much detail. I mean, I will explain why, but I'm not going to accept arguments to the contrary, claims of this or that or the other. I can't be that negative. I can't be that negative for too long. It's impossible to me. It's impossible to me to be that negative. I just can't. So there will be positivity. One of the positivities that I do have is that, man, Liam Delap took his time to make a great decision for his career, to join Chelsea, so that he's going to be the third choice striker there. Well done, kid. Good for you. Congratulations. It is funny though, because I remember the panic some people have. The lap isn't that good. He's not very good. You know, he's not very good. They're buying better players than Liam Delap all over the place. They are, and I think that's pretty funny. And they can't even register him until they sell 60 million. That's pretty funny as well. But hey, there's that. Enjoy, Liam Delap. Good for you. Glad you took the time to make your decision to join a club that will buy 7 more players in your position before the summer is over. Congratulations. Anyway, that's not negativity. That's positivity. That's pretty good. Didn't you really want Delap? No, I never wanted Delap, and I feel pretty confident in my decision and my opinion on not wanting Delap. I don't think he's the guy. I think he's the wrong guy. But that's neither here nor there when it has to do with us. But no, look, I've been feeling very positive. I've got an agenda to discuss today. We'll talk about striker, keeper, youth, Alvaro. We'll get to the Yap session. When we get to the Yap session, I will explain a bit more why I feel so positive about things and where I'm at. I mean, I explained to a degree yesterday my feelings about things, about players improving, about that kind of stuff. But there are other reasons to feel positive. There are other reasons to feel this way that are going to be hard to explain. Well, not hard to explain. They're easy to explain, but I think it's going to be hard for people to accept some of the truths that are necessary, but are actually very good news. It's all funny until we bid for Calvert-Lewin. I told you that's not real. I mean, I did tell you that, by the way. I told you that was not real. I told you that wasn't real. It wasn't. We've been offered Calvert-Lewin, no firm interest from United's side. So you know, I told you that wasn't real, but I also told you at the same time quite a few other things. It's just been slow. Um, so yeah, we're not gonna get Calvert-Lewin. Don't worry about it. Calvert-Lewin's just somebody who offered us, has been offered to us, and that's it. And someone's trying to sell him. Someone's trying to sell him um, to two clubs. So we'll get into it in just a second. I've got some things to discuss here. Did I tell you? Did you tell us it wasn't? I did. I did. I don't know if I've told you before that I told you it wasn't real, but I told you it wasn't real. What about Samu Amoridian? Yeah, Aghawa it is, but yes, I would love him, but we'll talk about that. So look, um, here's what we've got to do. Okay, here's what we got to discuss. We need to discuss the striker situation for sure. We need to discuss Victor. That's John Victor, another Victor, but a Victor I will be happy to sign, even if it's a little less sexy than the other Victors that we could have signed in this window. Apparently, there must always be a Victor in Manchester or something like that. We'll talk about John Victor, the keeper. We'll talk about some of the youth stuff in here as well, which is some of the positivity. We'll talk about some of the Alvaro stuff as well, and then we will yap it out at the same time. But we'll get to other stuff in the yap. Let me make some notes here, because I got some note. I need to make notes on some of the things to cover in the yap that are probably not worth their own section. We'll talk about it. We'll see if there's anything on Sancho that comes out from other sources by the end of the live. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about positive. Why am I positive? Why do I feel so good? Talk about Rashford. They were not told, by the way, necessarily stay away, just for what it's worth. I think that's a little bit confused. They were told that they have a later return date to full team training, but that they would have access to the facilities during that time, as is contractually obligated. No issue with that. So no, there's nothing wrong with Marcus Rashford going in to the facilities in which he is employed in order to work and improve his fitness and things like that. So yeah, there's nothing in there there's no issues in there. Another live at 12 a.m. My wife sleeps long again. I'm sorry, Hamid. I apologize. I'll try to do them at a different time, but it's just I've just been busy. Just had a lot to do. Been busy with work and stuff through all this time. So let's talk about the striker. This is an interesting one. Do the club leak names to see fan reactions? Not anymore, but they used to. Let's talk about striker, because this is an interesting, and this is obviously a big one with all right. There was a few things that were said, right? A few players have obviously been offered to us, which I think were mentioned, like Jamie Vardy. I think it was like, what, 6 weeks ago, I did a tweet like, what do you guys think about Jamie Vardy? And I brought it up, and I think people were very upset about it. I would still take, we were talking about it just on Monday as well. I would still take Jamie Vardy if we were to get another striker, obviously, a second striker. As a backup, I would absolutely love Jamie Vardy. Just the type of dickhead that I think the club needs a little bit more of in terms of being a bastard. And oh yes, smash the like buttons. Oh my god, I forgot, guys. Please make sure to like the stream. 700-800 people here, 70 likes. Come on now. What the hell? Did my stream just collapse? That's weird. Oh, sorry. My YouTube is being weird. Oh, weird. Okay, sorry. YouTube was weird. It said it stopped and everything went to 0. It was not even StreamYard, but that was just YouTube. It's okay. No lag. We're good. All right. Thank you. No, but look, the reality is obviously Jamie Vardy would be like, is like your backup option. But at least he's been there. At least he's been fit. I would trust him to make it on the pitch more than I would Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Regardless, these are players that have been offered to us on a free. They're not players that we're targeting. They're not players that we're trying to sign today or anything like that. They're not players we want to sign. As I said on Sunday when the news first came out, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, not a firm target for United. Just someone that they've been aware of for a long time that's available, but not somebody they're actively looking to sign. At this point in time, he's not a serious option. So if we end up signing Dominic Calvert-Lewin, then we failed fully in this window. Let's put it that way. On Moise Kean now, and Watkins. Now, I think it's pretty obvious that both Kean and Watkins are probably the two most similar, like, remaining options. Now, Moise Kean, I have to say, I completely forgot about this link. And I was reading, obviously in the deal sheet from Athletic today, they said, he said, yeah, the interest in Moise Kean's been there. I forgot all about this because we covered Moise Kean as a real target a long time ago. And he was even in the striker. We did some videos. We did some stuff. We talked about Kean for a reason because he is a real he is a real target that United are interested in or have that interested in. It was one of those targets that I could confirm as real. And I completely forgot about him for like the last 6 weeks. Apparently, so did everybody else. Because until today, nobody had been talking about him again. And here's the thing with Kean, right? Moise Kean's horrible, almost as bad as DCL. He's not. Here's the thing with Kean, and I stand by my original take on this, okay? Moise Kean is 25 years old now. He's had a really good season in Italy. He was really, really highly rated when he was young. And he really struggled in the Premier League when he joined Everton. And failed. Now, he was, 19 years old? Which, again, speaks to this point of, like, why you really shouldn't be bringing players in, when they're super young to come in as strikers. You know what I mean? It just kind of speaks to that. The thing is, he had actually a really good spell at Paris Saint-Germain afterwards as well. He's had a very, very kind of odd, kind of bouncing career, here and there. If we take a look at his numbers, like if you take a look at what actually happened to Moise Kean here, he's 18 years old, and I remember just how highly he was rated at the time when he joined Juventus, or when he was at Juventus, and he was starting to get all this hype. 18 years old, 6 goals in 541 minutes. He was getting all the hype. Everton went in, bought him. I mean, his return isn't absolutely terrible here, but I think he fell out like right away. Struggled, had a lot of difficulties. 19 years old, to be fair. Then he goes to Paris Saint-Germain, PSG, and scores 13 goals in 1,700 minutes the next season at 20 on loan. Excuse me. Which is actually quite a good return, frankly, at PSG. That's quite a good return, but there was some issues there. Again, only 20 years old, 13 goals, 1,700 minutes, pretty good return. Then kind of bounced around. Obviously, you look at it again, it's still not even a terrible return in any of those seasons, but he really couldn't find his place at Juventus. And then he goes to Fiorentina, has a really good season. 17 goals and 20 goals and assists and all that. When you compare like him last season, hold on a second, quit with the trying to sell things. I'm trying to look at this from a purely objective standpoint. If you look at him like last season compared to Ollie Watkins, in the reality of it, right? Ollie Watkins is a better all-round striker, creative, does a lot more. But Moise Kean shows up pretty well as a striker. In general, I mean, he is better than Vlahovic. But he shows up pretty well as a striker in general, last season in terms of what he actually did. Okay. So the point then comes to this. There's two things that I want to say about this, and these are my opinions. Number one, in terms of style, I understand why they want him. I understand why he's why there's interest in him. Okay. In terms of style, I understand why there's interest in him. I also understand that players fail when they're young strikers and they come to the Premier League. I've said that a million times. And then sometimes they get a chance to go away and mature, get better, and the time to sign them is later on in their careers. You sign strikers after the age of 25, in my opinion, to be your striker. I'm not saying we should sign Kean, but those are realities. I understand why they'd want to sign him stylistically, or why they'd be interested stylistically, because he is the right type of striker. He's very good dribbling. He's very good running the channels. He's good at taking a man on. He's a good finisher. And when you look at his numbers across his career, you can see that. He tends to finish pretty well. He takes his chances well. He takes on players well. He is not a creative player. He is a striker's sort of striker. He's going to run, he's going to shoot, and he's going to score sometimes. But all of that being said, again, those are the contexts. Those are the contexts around Moise Kean. Those are the contexts that's around Moise Kean. The problem is he's only had one good season, right? Players can be bad at 19, 20, and that doesn't mean you shouldn't sign them at 26, 27. That's not the reason we shouldn't sign him, is that he was bad at 19 or 20. The problem is that he hasn't had a continuous and regular career arc up to this point of becoming proven. Like, you take I'll just look at, like, you take some of these other players. Now, not doing it in England is sort of meaningless. It really is meaningless. I'm sorry, but it is. Because I've made the same argument about Victor Gyökeres. Victor Gyökeres, when he was 19, he was in the second division, and then he got up to Brighton at 20, didn't do anything, didn't even play. Okay, so he failed, and then he went to the championship, but then he had an arc upwards, right? He had an arc upwards, a regular growth pattern towards doing well. There's plenty of players that weren't necessarily doing the business at 19 and 20. Now, where was Ollie Watkins at 19? Exeter City, but look at this career arc. Like, nothing prolific, even at 21, 22, but then it starts to grow and it gets better and better. That's the problem. The problem is not what he did at 19 or 20. The problem is he's only had one good season by the point that he is now. If he went from, Mo Salah would probably be a good example there. It doesn't, not making it at 19 or 20 isn't the issue. Here's Mo Salah at 21, 22, 22. There's Mo Salah. This isn't why you don't sign the player, is because of what they did at 20, 21, 22. But it's this that you need to see, this growth. Multiple good seasons, growing, like two. At least he had 2 good seasons at Roma before Liverpool signed him and he exploded. For me, Moise Kean, then, to me, he's just a big risk. He's just a big risk. He's a big risk. That you have to look at a trend. You can't look at one-offs. His trend has been bad. He's been mediocre spike. There's no consistency in his game. So, again, it's one season, and that's why I wouldn't sign him, because he's only done one season. If you watch him, by your logic, shouldn't we keep faith in Højlund? No, because that's not what I said at all. You wouldn't, because Højlund doesn't have a consistent trend of success, so you wouldn't sign him. It's not because Højlund is failing at 20. If he was 5 years from now, If Hoyland went elsewhere and was really successful for 5 years, then you'd look at him and say, okay, you wouldn't look at when he's 20 and say, well, we're never going to sign him. You would look at him and say, like if Hoyland was at Chelsea right now and then he left and went to PSG and had 4 good seasons, you would say at that point a lot of people would say we should sign him. And rightly so, because you'd see a career arc. Failing at 19 or 20 doesn't mean you failed at a career. Not making it at 19 or 20 doesn't mean you didn't make it as a career. But you have to move away at that point in time. You have to get out of the pressure, the situation that isn't working. You have to grow as a player, and then you have to have that consistency of success. And that is what he hasn't had. And that's why I wouldn't sign him. That's why I wouldn't sign him. I would just, if you were to sign him, you would be saying you hope he can replicate the single season, good season that he's had, because there are features of his game that are decent. And there's a reason he was hyped at 19, and there's a reason that he's had a good season this year. There are features of his game that are there, but by the time you're 25, 26, you need to be expressing that on the pitch and getting results with it. He's only had 1 season on that. So for me, it's an okay signing if you're doing 20 to 30 million, but it's a big gamble, and you definitely don't buy it at 50 because you're just betting on that point. You're just betting on that. Like, can they replicate that season, or was the good season a fluke, or are they going to go back? He would be okay for cheap, but probably a signing that's like a stopgap, and you're still going to sign someone else. So no, not for 50 million, not for 60 million, not for 45 million. Doesn't matter. You got to do 15, 20, 25 million at most for something like that, because you're taking a gamble. So yeah, I'm not big on that. You 100%. When you look at the fee of it, 45 million pounds for him is that release clause till July 15th. Well, Ollie Watkins is 50 million pounds, and it's a guarantee. Ollie Watkins gives you a guarantee of what you hope you could get out of Kean. That is a huge gamble. So there's no reason not to just go get Ollie Watkins in that case. You should pay I would pay 20 million more for Watkins than I would for Kean, because you know what you're getting. You're going to get your 12 to 18 goals. And that's what you're going to get. So, that makes sense to me. It doesn't make sense to do that unless it's really, really cheap and it's sort of a fallback option that you could go for late on in the window. 50 million is just the price I know. It's the price that I've heard. It's the price that's been reported by others as well. 50 million for Ollie Watkins. That's the price. That's the asking price anyway. So yeah, we'll see. How many seasons does Watkins gives you? 5, 4, I don't know, something like that. But yeah, so no, I wouldn't sign Kean, but I also get it. Like I've said before, that when you look at like the players that we've profiled, there's a similarity about many of them. They play the right way. They play the way that we obviously want from a striker. That's why I understand why Kean would be wanted as well. There's a lot of similar profiles that we're seeing, and that part of it is important to me, that we are looking at similar profiles for striker, because that tells me at least the planning makes sense. There's times we've gone from, like the thing is people will say, okay, we've got to get, if we're targeting Watkins, Delap, and Gyökeres, and you switch to Ekitike, that is the type of shit that doesn't make sense to me, because you go from one type of striker to one totally different type of striker. Well, why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense. If you're trying to build a team based on a way you want to play, you get the guy who matches that, and you look at all the targets who match that. And what we've done in the past is go do that exact thing. Buy someone totally different, buy somebody completely different for more money, and it just makes no sense to me. That's De Jong to Casemiro. You know what I mean? It's like you get someone like you're targeting De Jong, and then you go for Casemiro, completely different players, and you spend a ton of money on him. That's what we can't do in this position. Mateta is another one that makes sense for this as well, stylistically. Mateta is one that makes sense as well. Stylistically, he makes sense. And I would be very, very much for Mateta. So those ones make sense. And it's the reason why I think Ramos does not make sense, even though we'll keep an eye on it. I think that Ramos makes less sense. He's not the right type of player. He's more a utility player. He's not the same type of striker that they've been looking at. He's not so much of a runner. He's much more of just a box occupational number 9 with good finishing, good in the air, things like that. But he's not going to be running the channels the way that these other guys will. He's not the same type of player. So that's why they're not going to like quickly move on to him. It would be like, hey, can I get somebody in who can score some goals, who can sit in the box in certain different positions and things like that. You know, and that, yeah. So I mean, another one that does make somewhat sense in that sense is Kolo Muani, right? They've been looking at Kolo Muani for a while, and they've been looking at Kolo Muani for a while, and they've asked for him on a couple of different occasions. Could they revisit that? I don't totally know the situation with Kolo Muani right now. Juventus are trying to keep him or something like that. But he also makes sense for this. You know, he also makes sense for this. He's also a player that good on the ball. You know, a guy who's got good physical attributes to run the channels. You know, do the things that you would want. It's also why I would have looked at Nicholas Jackson, to be honest. But I would consider Nicholas Jackson. He can do some of those things too. But that's maybe an unpopular opinion for another day as a backup option. Marcus Thuram, sure, but I don't think he's going anywhere. Darwin Nunez, yeah, he fits too, but you're getting the type of striker correct here. Obviously, those are the ones to keep in mind, but that doesn't mean we're gonna buy them. You know, that doesn't mean we're gonna go for all of them. So yeah, it is what it is. There's a lot of players who split tons of opinions. Benjamin Šeško is one that makes absolutely no sense for this type of system. For what we're wanting. He's one that's like completely different. He's one that's completely different. But no, look, I like a certain type. I like a certain type of striker in general. I wouldn't prefer most of those guys. Pretty much from the list that's remaining, I would just bring in Ollie Watkins, and I wouldn't even move beyond that, to be quite honest. Samu Aghawa kind of fits that too. He's young. He's good at running the channels. He's good at pace. He's also good in the box and quite physical. So I think that Aghawa would be a great one, but we haven't heard anything in quite a long time on United following some early scouting of him that they did have. So I think that in reality, if I were to pick from options we've been even tenuously linked with, it would be Aghawa or Watkins. That's what I would like. One of those. Watkins or Aghawa would probably be my top choices in there. Yeah, those would be the ones I would really like. He probably would be expensive, and I would have my concerns given that he's a young player. But he has been at Atletico already. He's been in Portugal, so he's got some experience at least that maybe he can handle it. But yeah. I mean, it is funny because you have Arsenal over there. Like, people, United fans complaining here about trying to buy strikers for a system, but you have a lot of Arsenal fans worried right now that they're getting in Yoker as a player, and assessments, and you know, and what you've got, like, um people writing articles and analysts and things saying Gyökeres may not really fit into Arsenal's system, but if it works, they'll get goals, and I agree with that as well. It's sort of funny. Šeško does fit the way Arteta wants to play more, and I do wonder how Arteta will use Victor Gyökeres, and if he will be able to use him correctly, or if he will fail to. Will he adjust his system to fit in a player like that? We will see. So anyway, yeah, it sounds like Berta has won that for sure. It does sound like Berta has won the power struggle there, and is having a lot of is having the most influence on things at the moment. So we'll see. So that's striker. We've got some options still. Openda fits the profile perfectly. He does, but he had a really down season and something. I'm not sure, what the exact issue is. There, because I can't say I've watched him enough to know, but he does fit the profile. But regardless, Kean, Watkins, and some of the other names we mentioned, all ones that United would be keeping an eye on at the very least, and that fit the profile. And those are the ones that I would keep an eye on the most. Who fits the profile of what we're trying to buy? Buying a profile is not buying for a manager. Like, the thing people have to bear in mind is what we're doing right now is going to look a lot like buying for a manager. Because we picked a manager who matches the way we want to play. Do you understand that? We picked a manager who matches the way we want to play, and now we have to build a squad that matches the way we want to play, which will also match our current manager. If Amram doesn't succeed, we have to go get another manager who stylistically will want to use most of the same players. That's how you have continuity. That's how you don't have to blow up the squad every single year. The problem is not so much have we bought players for a manager, because you can do manager-centric recruitment. Like, we built a Solskjaer team. We built a Solskjaer team. And then after Solskjaer, instead of going to Pochettino, which would have made the logical sense stylistically to play a similar way to how Solskjaer played, because Pochettino's football is basically a slightly leveled up version of Solskjaer's system. We completely zagged, went to Ten Hag, and then destroyed the entire club, basically. Undid any progress that we had made, started over, ran out everybody that we could. Talk about Alvaro Fernandez on that in a minute, and then, made awful decisions. That's the zigzag nature of how you are buying players. Everything is so opposite. This is new leadership, new ownership, new appointments, everything. So, yeah, it does look like buying players for a manager when it's your first manager for a club, your first manager for a system. And that doesn't mean three at the back. People are too focused on three at the back. It doesn't mean people are focused on, or it doesn't mean three at the back. That's not really the answer. Chelsea in the final of Club World Cup doesn't. No, it doesn't matter. Be cool. The UEFA restrictions are different to the other restrictions, but it's fine. So anyway, that's how we're buying players. That's how we're moving forward. Solskjaer did have a good eye for talent. He was a good. How do you do that when you flog off four wingers? Who were the four wingers that we flogged? Who were the four wingers that we flogged? Who are the players we've bought that won't fit into other systems, and who are the wingers that we've gotten rid of, that were supposedly like that we should have kept, that would have let us succeed elsewhere. Who are the wingers? Arguably the only player of value over the last few years that we're losing is Marcus Rashford. The only player who's actually ever done anything in his career is Marcus Rashford, and his most success has been playing more closer to the front, not out wide. So it's not like we've turned around and sold a bunch of wingers that's gonna kill us. We have Ahmad. He's a winger. You switch from a 3 at the back to a 4 at the back, you just put Ahmad at right wing. Easy. No problem at all. You buy Brian Mbeumo, you play him as a right 10, you play him as a right winger. You go from 3 at the back to 4 at the back, those same players will be successful. Cunha can play as a 10, he can play as a 9, he can play as a left wing, he can play as a left 10. These are pretty flexible forwards, frankly. So, no, I don't think we've destroyed anything with what we've done in that respect. The players that we're buying are flexible, and the players that we've let go, okay, so be it. I don't know what to say. I don't see anything wrong with I don't think we've like put ourselves in some crazy position that we will never be successful in. Losing Sancho, losing Garnacho has very little to do with the formation, and Anthony was crap in a system that suited him perfectly. So, none of that stuff really matters to me. I don't think that we've done anything that is going to ruin any future prospects or formations. We still have plenty of players that fit everything. So the next thing, obviously, to discuss is Jean Victor. Now, Jean Victor is somebody that I mentioned that I was able to confirm our interest in him. That's one, because I'd asked about a bunch of like these South American links and things like that. I said Richard Rios is not one I can confirm, but Jean Victor was one I did confirm, and it was good to see, encouraging, I should say, to see what would you call it? It was encouraging to see Laurie confirm that link as well, or maybe it was Critchler, whoever it was in The Athletic, confirmed that link as well, that it's real. That we do have an interest in him and all of that as well. So that is confirmed, that we do have an interest in Jean Victor, that is a valid link. Obviously, we want to get a keeper in who can compete, with Onana. I kind of explained the whole Onana situation in yesterday's live. I believe I spent quite a while on that. He's a keeper. Are you asking what country he plays for? He plays for Botafogo. But it would be like a Baindia replacement, yes, but he's also a pretty decent keeper. And is he the long-term answer for United? Probably not. A lot of the guys that we're looking at, there's potential they're not the long-term answer, but they are potentially a pair of safe hands that gives you the opportunity to bench Onana and to put somebody in there who can do a good job. That's mostly what we're looking at this year. I think in the future, again, we will invest more in the goalkeeper position, but the priority now is have options. We need to have options. We need to have somebody who can play that where we can actually, bench Onana as needed in order to, to get something done. I wouldn't worry about what he's experienced. He's been in Europe. He's been elsewhere. I've got no problem with that. I think this is a good potential signing. Would be affordable. We just need another keeper as an option. We just need another keeper as an option right now. That gives us a choice, because we know we're not going to spend a bunch of money here unless someone comes in with a big offer for Onana. So it's another real option that we have. Him, Vanya, maybe something else. And yeah. So and then there's ones that are more like prospects that we like Lamens, but we'll see which direction we go by the end of the window. Would Onana also be going to the Africa? But then that's also possible too. That Victor, that with AFCON and all of that, we need another keeper that can legitimately play regardless of the situation. So, yeah. I mean, look, it's obviously a focus. Is Bayendir leaving? I don't know. But we obviously are looking still at getting another keeper in the door. We're trying to get another keeper in the door. So hopefully that gets done. That's a big one that has to get done for us, really. We really do need that to get somebody in. And maybe some of our youth keepers will be good in the future, but I wouldn't say yet that they're ready to get in there. So that is the keeper. Then there's youth. So good stuff on the youth side of it. Obviously, a few players to kind of focus on here that were participating. Bendito Mantato, Shea Lacey, Reese Monroe, and according to our good friend Academy Arena, Jimmy Thwaites, right? Jimmy Thwaites, he's been given the number 77. So Jimmy Thwaites also took part in first team training today. They all got different numbers. They've all been kind of upgraded. We spoke a lot about Mentato at the back half of last year. I think it was maybe a little bit of a disappointment. He didn't get a debut on. He was like really close at a certain point, but didn't end up getting on the pitch. But he is, Vitek and Harrison as well, yeah. But Bendito, Shea Lacey, Jimmy Thwaites, and Reese Monroe. Good to see, obviously, all of them participating in first team training. Players who I think will get a shot during preseason. You know what I mean? They will get a chance in preseason to impress. Maybe they'll all go on the tour, hopefully, along with Harrison and Vitek. Who can get a chance? Who can? Mentato had a couple little injuries, things as well. Who can get a chance to impress? Who can get a chance to be a part of the team? Who can get a chance? Maybe they get some minutes this season. Who will they look at and decide to go on loan? All of that, we'll see there. So pretty exciting, in that respect. I'm very encouraged by the youth. Kind of crop. Some of these guys who are not quite ready but will be in a year or two. There's a lot of good players there. And again, I always quell expectations a bit on like how many are going to make it. But we have at least a good batch that gives us the best odds of getting a couple players. And every year we should have one player really break through. That should be the goal. Every year we should get at least one player to really break through. And we'll see who that is. We'll see who that is this year. There's obviously a lot of potential options for that. Some guys who were in the team a bit at the end of last year and everything. But there's a really good crop of these kids coming through who in the next year or two are going to be ready. And have a chance. Ready, I say ready to see if they can break into the team or get a chance. So hopefully soon. Some of them need to definitely get bigger, and that's a question. Shea Lacey's very, very talented. He's got to get bigger. I would say the same about Jimmy Thwaites. He's incredibly talented. Hopefully he grows a little bit, but he's a really, really talented player as well. It's one of the reasons why I think Mentato has a really good chance, and why I'm very, very excited to see what happens with him, is that he has an explosiveness physically that is well advanced. He can be so explosive, he can be so good, and hopefully he gets to see that, because you can see it when you watch him that he can be a step ahead of everybody at his level from a physical standpoint. Like, he's not massive or anything, but he has like that Ahmad type of thing where he can be quite explosive, quite fast, deceptively so at times, and strong as well in terms of his his balance and things. So hopefully I really hope we get to see him. He's a player I'd really like to see on tour and see if he can impress, because I think he will. And there's others too, but this is a good sign. We need players to get into the. We need some help here, and I think one of the advantages here. Simpler season, we can run a smaller squad. You know, if we lose 8-9 players, we don't need 8-9 players. We need 3-4, and then bring in some, get some youth to be filling it out. So we'll see, but it is exciting to see more of them, and we'll see who ends up coming on the tour in the end. But I'm quite excited about almost all of those guys who are named. You know what I mean? Who are taking part in first team training right now, and that we will see them moving forward. Speaking of some of my former youth players in Alvaro Fernandez, another, to some degree, massive embarrassment from the Ten Hag era. A player that he didn't want, that he didn't rate, that he didn't want anything to do with in Alvaro Fernandez. That we went without a left back, so he can complain that he didn't have a left back, but moved on Alvaro at the same time. Set to join Real Madrid. Looks like that one is nearly wrapped up. And we'll get some money from it. Now, it sounds like there's potentially going to be some of a swap deal in this, so we'll see how it's organized. We will see how he's organized, how it's organized at this point in time, and how, in terms of how much that we get. But we will get some. And just a little bit more money in the bank. But it is embarrassing that, we move on. Yeah, the Iqbal thing I read from Andy Mitten, it's not surprising. I mean, I have nothing but poor things to say about Erik ten Hag. I've told you before, and people used to really fight me on this, but I used to tell you there's a lot more behind the scenes. Things like, I used to talk a lot about broken promises, misleading, people not understanding what they had to do to make it at United under Ten Hag. They had no clue what they needed to do, what had to happen, where they stood with the club, with the manager. And that Iqbal interview is a perfect example of that. He's playing, he's practicing, he's in that position, and then he's supposed to be playing, and then he just gets yoinked out from under him, and that's it. You know what I mean? And I'm just going to say it very, very quietly here, but that is exactly what happened to Jadon Sancho as well. That led to all of the drama, not taking side on Jadon Sancho, that, his actions subsequent to that were really poor. But that is the exact thing that he did. That's exactly what pissed off Rafael Varane. It's what pissed off Casemiro. It's what pissed off a number of players that Ten Hag would do. He was just dishonest. The communication was unbelievably bad. That was the biggest criticism that happened when Ineos came in. They felt that the communication and all of that from, between the manager, the players, and all that was so horrid that there was absolutely no, it just created a horrible atmosphere, worse than we've ever had, and is a direct, cause of this. Rashford as well. Yep, and that's like I said, someday more and more of it will come out. More and more of it will come out, no doubt about that. More and more will come out about what happened during that time. But it's nasty. To me, it's nasty stuff. I really don't like it. So, that's that. On there. In the meantime, now we're having no buyers. We're practically having to give away Malacia, who he bought in return. So it is what it is. So yeah, bit of a bummer. That, but at least we will get some money from the whole situation, and that is a positive. That is a good thing. Malasia to Celtic. I don't know. I don't. I have actually no clue about that. Whether there's any truth in that or not. All right. So what else did I want to talk about today? What else did I want to yap about? Because I wanted to yap now after this. Um, guess they brought in Steve McLaren to help with the communication. Well, I've got a little to say about that as well. Oh yeah, then there's the things claimed by Amadou Onana, rather, his agent. I mean, the list could go on and on of the players that we missed out on. I mean, it is almost impossible to express just how badly that 3-year tenure, 2-year tenure really screwed this club. Like just how bad it was. Like it was so bad what it did in the end in terms of who we missed out on that we should have got, and who we bought that we shouldn't have, and who we sent. I mean, it completely destroyed so much, man. It is unbelievable. Hundreds of millions. And it's not just Ten Hag, obviously, because the people who were in charge enabled and created this at that time. And yeah, that's where we've ended up. It's absolutely incredible, but it did quite literally did 3 to 5 years of damage. What happened at that point in time over those two seasons? It's incredible. It's the job of climbing back from that is amazing. But oh well, that's what we've got to do. That's what we've got to do. That's what we've got to climb out of, that hole. That is what we have to climb out of. So, anyway, that's that. Obviously, on Sancho, there's some claims in Italian media that it's like a done deal. There were strong reports yesterday that there was going to be more talks today between... Oh, no, we'll get to the positivity because I feel very positive. And then it's very easy. We'll explain exactly why that in a minute. That's part of the reason why I feel so positive, is if you understand what has happened, then it becomes very understandable why we ended up where we ended up, right? If you don't know why you failed, if you don't understand why you've ended up where you are and what the actual cause of those things are, then you can't fix it. If you end up in the hospital for something and they can't figure out what's wrong, you're screwed. But if they can figure out exactly what is wrong, what is causing these problems, and how you can fix it, that is a reason to feel good. That is a reason to feel good. That is a reason for positivity. If you don't identify those things and you don't know them and you can't solve them, then you're screwed. It's diagnose and treat. It's the same, and it happens in everywhere. When you can understand the causality of things, then you can change those things. And when those things change, then you will end up where you want to be. But yeah, there was a report on Jadon Sancho that the deal was almost done. Now, I don't know if that's true or not as of yet. It wasn't a great source, but at the same time, there were very good sources saying that they were continuing to talk, specifically today, that there would be more talks. Between Juventus and Sancho. So hopefully that something comes of that. Now, they were kind of saying, like, they were talking about Conceição, but then there was other reports that were saying that that's not really the case, that it's actually they want both. They sent some kind of offer. They sent some kind of offer to Portugal, which was rejected. and now they're trying to include a player and something. So point being, they're trying to sell players to make space because ideally they would like to get both, is at least my understanding of that side of it. You know, that's my gathering of that situation. I believe that's why they've been talking to both. I don't think it's an alternative. I think they're kind of just, some of the reports on the alternatives are just it's a bit of negotiations. Is kind of what I thought. So we'll see. They want to get rid of Weah. They want to move on like Douglas Luiz or something as well, and then hopefully get a couple, keep Conceição and get Sancho in as well. Any chance we get secret Orny exclusive? It could be. It could be. I mean, again, we're gonna need help from Mbumo's side, to push this through, I believe, and to get it done. No doubt about that. So that's Sancho. I don't understand the reason why Rashford. There shouldn't be much by way of. There's no reason to be angry at Rashford to returning to the club to train. It's his career. He's contracted. There's no reason for him to stay somewhere else for a couple weeks. Very specifically, as it said in the reports, he's being kept away from the first team, but he's there to train, there to use the facilities, there to do all of that. There's nothing wrong with any of that. So no reason for people to be upset for Rashford coming back to United to train and prepare either way. Nothing wrong with that. I don't know what there would be. Have I seen a Football España report on Anthony? No. If you have something of interest, then let me know of that, because I'm happy to see. It's been a little bit quiet on the Anthony. It's been pretty quiet on the Anthony Batiste front, even though they're still going. So I haven't heard anything on that Milton Delgado link either. I could probably check on it, but I don't like to check on like every single link because it can get kind of irritating. I mean, you can end up asking 200 questions, and at some point, you know, when you start asking sources about that, they just start to ignore you. It's too many, and I don't want to overstay my welcome on a bunch of names, so I'll leave that one. We've been able to confirm Victor. That's the important one to me, and we've been able to unconfirm Ish, Calvert-Lewin, and all of that. So yeah. Anyway, on the positivity note of it, it's kind of simple. Yeah, the construction is still underway at Carrington. It'll be done in August. Marzio just said Vlahovic's contract is getting terminated. What? What do these people do? What goes on in Italy, man? Is that true? Oh, they will propose to his agents the termination of the contract. So they were going to say, we don't want you. Here's a payoff. Here's a payoff to end your contract early. So you be a free agent. You're free to go find a move, but we're going to pay you less than what we owe you for the life of his contract. We did stuff like that. Like we were talking about that on Monday in The View, like with Alexis Sanchez, with some others, things like that. So interesting. I mean, that might free up some money for them. But that is an interesting one. So that's what they want. Free up salary space, yeah. I get that. I mean, I certainly wouldn't buy him. No doubt about that, but I get that. Not relevant to us, but interesting. Them trying to make up salary space. Well, maybe that'll help them get Jadon Sancho in the door. So Juventus are obviously being quite active. That much is for sure. But anyway, as to the positivity that I have, I am feeling very positive on United as well. I am feeling very positive. You know, one of the things that, like we were just talking about in general, is understanding like why things get to the state that they get to. Why the club has ended up where it is. Why things are so, bad, essentially. Why we end up where we've kind of ended up. And one belief that I hold very strongly, and this isn't even a present thing, because I've talked about it for like, I don't know, 2 years. It was one of my biggest reasons why I wanted Ten Hag to leave. So it has nothing to do with toxic positivity or delusion or anything like that. Um, so often last season and previously, I talked about how there was, and I think it's massively underrated as a reason, like as a reason for success, as a reason for failure, as a reason that things happen. Um, United is so fragmented. The team, the squad as a unit has been so unbelievably fragmented. Um, it's been crazy, and it's been like this for a while, and it got a lot worse during the Ten Hag era as well. There was a point like where under Solskjaer, right, where if you really look at the team, it wasn't necessarily that great all the time. But there was a positivity, there was a unit, there was a togetherness that grew that helped it to probably exceed what it should have done. And that mental aspect is a huge part of football. That mental aspect is a huge part of everything. There's been times under other managers that it's gone bad and all of that. But in the last few years, it's been literally worse than ever. The camps within, between the players, the fractured decision making, and it's not just the players. The coaches disagreeing with each other, the analysts disagreeing with each other, the staff disagreeing with each other, the scouts and the directors disagreeing with each other. I mean, I know that back in 2020, for example, what our chief scouts wanted, what our chief analysts wanted, what the manager wanted, what Woodward wanted, and what Glazers wanted, none of that made any sense. None of that had any sort of alignment. They all wanted different things. They all had completely different things. No, you guys are stupid, honestly. It is Ten Hag. This is still literally the team Ten Hag built, okay? When you got to understand that. Trying to deflect from that, this is literally the team that he built. But it's not just him. It's him and the people above him. If you can't get that at this point, this is literally Ten Hag's team. It still is. Well, not anymore as of this season. So no, it's not Ten Hag is over. These things don't change overnight. They weren't created overnight, and they don't end overnight. They're created over years and years and years of mismanagement and people who don't fit together and don't work together. We can keep talking that. That is the reason things are where they are. That is the reason we've got where we've got to be. And it's not even about buying players. That's kind of missing the point of it. The fractured whole of everything that was in there. What Ruben Amorim did, if you followed his career, was the exact same thing that he's done this summer. He's his biggest focus and his biggest success at Ruben Amorim, at Sporting of Ruben Amorim, was the removal of toxic elements from the club. That was his biggest initial impact and success in the first season that he had at Sporting, is to remove the toxic elements from the team. So when they announce 5 players aren't returning, when he's had that time to identify that, to put that in place, they have been removed. And he's had time to make that happen, to decide who can leave. And there's different aspects to being a toxic element. It's not all toxic elements. There's toxic elements, there's misaligned elements, there's people who aren't pushing the same direction. And when you have people pushing in different directions, you cannot have success. You just can't. You need everybody to pushing the same way. Some of that can be purposeful. Some of it is just people in different aspects and different phases of their careers and things like that. Ruben Amorim, his greatest strength has always been as a man manager and as a communicator, fitting the right pieces together, figuring out who fits and who doesn't. And what you have now, probably for the first time in ages, is, sure, there's a small team that's left at the moment. I mean, you look at the seniors, when you remove those 5 players and you do all of that, then you've got, I don't know what, 16, 17 players to come in. If you focus on new players, you're going to miss the point. It's like I was saying yesterday, you need a lot of these players to improve for United to become a place that even new players can come into and join. But the alignment of, let's say, like I said in the beginning, it's hard to get people to believe it, but just how much misalignment and problem that there were before was there. You look at, I mean, unfortunately, I tend to constantly use the examples of Jurgen Klopp, because Klopp, aside from they bought good players, every single player that came in under Klopp improved, practically. Not every single player was a win, I would suppose, but where they ended up performing, every player that they got better at Liverpool. And they started in a lot of ways with getting rid of players that you would have said, oh my gosh, well, you get rid of them. They got rid of, Coutinho. They got rid of others. They got rid of people like that. And he changed the culture. You can hate it. You can not like it. You could be upset about it. You can disagree all you want. But if Klopp hadn't improved the culture at Liverpool first, changed the way that things were going, then it wouldn't have been successful to bring in new signings, to bring in big players, to bring in top players into the team. It wouldn't have been successful. He created a culture where a core of players that were there previously, some of them got massively better. And a lot of them came in and then improved. That's what you look at. Liverpool didn't do it by buying Galacticos to get where they are. I mean, they spent a lot of money, don't get me wrong, in the end, not all at once. But they signed good players that became great. And they made players that they had, people used to joke about, like Jordan Henderson and Milner and these types of guys, and made them better and better and better. And the core underneath that was the togetherness that they had as a unit, as a team. You can hate it all you want. You can disagree with it all you want, but that's what they did. And that has been missing for a long time. Like I was saying yesterday, most of our players have gotten bad. Most of our players have gotten worse. And not improved. And that's why I was saying yesterday, we need to see that players are actually going to improve at United who are already there. We need to see that. We need to see that players who are there are going to get better. That's why I'm not being negative on them. We need to see Xerxes have a better season. We need to see De Ligt have a better season. We need to see the majority of players, we need to see them play better. Otherwise, it doesn't matter what we buy. If the players who are there aren't improving, then whoever we buy is also going to flop. And that doesn't matter. Ruben Amorim came to Sporting and got rid of toxic players from the team. Right. And that's exactly what he did. That's exactly what he's done. And that's exactly what we're doing this summer. Now, last season was a massive season of chaos and change, unfortunately. Certainly was. And I'm not just talking about at the club. Obviously, you're bringing a manager in midseason. I'm not just talking about on the field. You bring a manager in midseason, but what else is changing? A complete rework of the structures above the manager, that support the team, from the medical staff to how they rehab, to how their fitness works together, to how they train, to how to how the recruitment, to going smaller and getting people more aligned, from the scouting and all those departments, from all the way up. So yes, the culture is not just created on the pitch, it's all the way through. But sometimes it's just getting smaller. What we've had for a long time is too many scouts with too many different opinions, too many staff with too many different opinions, too many people with too many different opinions. And so there's been nothing that has been aligned in that respect. I can tell you, like I said, there's a lot of people who aren't going to believe it. There's a lot of people who aren't going to believe it. But there are huge, huge differences in the way that practically everything aligns off the pitch that have never been there before. In just how aligned it is from top to bottom in the direction, that they're going and where they want to be, rather than the constant, fighting, disagreement, things like that. And a lot of it has a lot more to do with than just transfers. Transfers are a part of the success that needs to happen, a part of bringing new players in. And that is 90% down to the limited finances that are available. If United had unlimited finances, it wouldn't be slow. It would be very fast. That is down to the financials, and that is an unfortunate fact of life. That's what we have to do as well. But I feel very, very strongly in understanding that where things are at, that they've got to deliver these new players. That's their job, to make that happen, to get it done, no matter what. But again, it is also true that the rest of it has to work. The rest of it has to get done. Yeah, Arsenal do love our alignment. Arsenal did the exact thing. They went cheaper, they went younger, they got rid of toxic elements at the club, they got rid of high earners at the club. They had, to some degree, a worse team, and yet it all worked out a lot better, and they climbed their way back up consistently rather than boom or bust. It's actually another very good example, even though I don't totally rate Arteta in general, in terms of his ceiling of where he's at. What he did extremely well was come in and realign everything, and it did change very, very quickly on that basis alone. It wasn't superstars from season one. A lot of the players they have now are not players that people were clamoring for when they got them in those first couple of seasons. Those were not players that people were thinking those are the best players on earth. That's going to solve all the problems. They're a very good example of how they changed that culture, and realigned a very broken club, and have achieved some pretty impressive consistency with it, and performed well above where one would have expected with the players that they had at the time. And now they've added to it, and we'll see if they can take it all the way or not. But, they kicked out Aubameyang, and they kicked out, Ozil, and they did all of that in order to get there. And these things do matter. These things do matter. These things do change. These things make a difference. Arsenal probably used to be one of the most toxic atmospheres in football. I remember it. I remember what would happen. I remember the attitude between the fans and the players and things like that. It was probably like it is now. We're in that phase. If you go back 4 years of Arsenal, ironically, again, it was when the owners kind of actually got ownership and actually started to invest in the club and pay attention to it. We're in that current phase where there's this massive antagonism between the players and the fans and things like that. I remember Xhaka getting jeered as they were booing him off as he got another red card. I remember them getting red cards like every day. It was so toxic. The whole thing was so toxic. And yet it improved and it turned around. And it was not just signing players. This is where I'm gonna act like Andy Mitten and say people's focus on transfers sometimes is just a bit too much in understanding it. Like, you do realize we've bought a lot of players. We've invested, okay? We've invested $1 billion. We invested more than anybody. You understand that? You understand that? We tried just buying players. You do get that, right? We bought players under the Glazers. We spent more money than anyone under Ten Hag. You do understand that. It's not just buying players. We spent more money than anybody under Ten Hag, okay? So the clamoring like, well, we just have to buy more players and just keep buying more players. No, that's not necessarily the answer. We tried that. It's not just transfers. You just say, okay, we're just going to buy more transfers. We just buy more players, just buy more players. We spent money, we spent it badly. Yeah, exactly. It's not just buy more players. It's like, it is interesting in that respect. But no, they didn't go and buy like Galacticos left and right. We can look at their record if you want. As to how they turned it around, in general, and you look at it and say, it wasn't just transfers. This is not a huge window. You understand that? This wasn't like some massive window. This wasn't like some massive window. They got unnamed player who's now named. Gabriel for 26 million, who was rated decently, and Pablo Mari. That turned around their whole thing, and then they signed Willian and Cedric Suarez on a free. Like, it wasn't just transfers that turned everything around for them. That's not a massive window. You can't convince me Cedric Suarez, Willian, Pablo Mari, Gabriel, and Thomas Partey is a massive window. They spent 86 million euros total. They got one top player in, one very good player at the time in, one young player, a couple of old free players, and Pablo Mari. Unnamed players now named. Then the next window, all right, they overspent massively on Ben White. They got Odegaard in, good for them. They got Ramsdale in, an affordable keeper that did well. Tomiyasu, who they've just ended his contract. Lukonga, who didn't ever kick on. And Nuno Tavares, who was injured forever as well. Where's the massive window that turned things around? They got one permanent good player in that's even still relevant today. Ben White is a flop. Ben White's probably relevant today. I still think he's crap, but he's actually done well. Forget that. They signed two good players. Ramsdale temporarily helped them a lot, and then they replaced him. They signed two good players in Ben White and Odegaard. Where's this massive window that turned everything around for them? It doesn't exist. Then they got Gabby Jesus, Fabio Vieira, and Zinchenko. And then in January, they got some more. So again, where is this massive window that turned everything around for them? It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. You just made it up. What they actually did, what Arsenal actually did. Ooh, calm down. Everything's okay.
But James, with next summer being a World Cup, it's going to be hard to do
I'm not worried about that.
First next summer, no?
No,
I feel like this has to be a 6-player window.
I'm not worried about that. I mean, the World Cup can complicate things, but it doesn't matter. We're united. I'm not particularly worried about that. What they actually did was clean house, make a few key signings, utilize the youth, and play really well and improve a lot of players. We're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna remove the toxic elements from the chat because I'm just bored of it. And we'll see that magically the chat is a lot nicer when suddenly we remove the toxic elements from the chat. It's gonna be really interesting to see that, how suddenly it makes for a more positive, better atmosphere in general when we start to remove the toxic elements. But that is what they did because it became so toxic, it became so difficult that no matter what you did in terms of signing players, you couldn't succeed. That's where we're at. They didn't have massive windows. They had good windows where they got a few good players in and they turned things around. Um, and don't kick me, bro. um, and um, and then they saw a lot of players improve. That's what has to happen. Okay, that is what actually has to happen. It's not a matter of like dreaming. It's not a matter of anything. That has to happen. If we cannot improve the players that we have, if we cannot make alignment within the team, then it will not matter. We have to. Like, people need to put their big boy pants on and look at the reality of the situation. Like I said, when people say we finished 15th, when we did all of that, right, that means we can't go buy 6 to 8 players. You understand? We cannot turn over the whole team. But every successful team, bar maybe Man City, who've doped and had unlimited funds coming in, have had to have their team improve, their players improve, and build step by step by step to get back where they need to be. And it is possible. And it is possible. It is possible to do that because many clubs have done it. Liverpool did it. Arsenal did it. We should be able to. We will have the more money. Now, what do we have to do to make that happen? One, we need to ideally get these players moving on. Of course, we still need to get that to happen. We need 8 players moved on. And of course, we need transfers. But there's the ability to talk about things. Let's do it again. Here we go. Let's remove more toxic elements, and suddenly we will see. Point is, we have to. That's what has to happen. Now, personally, I think it will, because understanding what's going on behind the scenes, there is an alignment. There is an atmosphere and a setting that has never been there before. Quite literally never been there before. Well, maybe not been there in 15 years since Sir Alex left. He was huge on that. He would kick people out the moment he felt that they were a distraction to the environment. You know that, right? That is what he did. That's how he was. They were gone. The moment he felt they were a distraction to the environment, because at the end of the day, that is what makes more of a difference than anything else, in terms of management. So from everything I hear, everything I see, I would say there's more alignment than there ever has been before from top to bottom. And that the atmosphere around the players and the coaching staff and where they're at and people being on the same page in their determination to where they want to get to is better than it has ever been before. I feel very strongly that that's the case. Now, we'll see if they can do it. We'll see if they can improve. We'll see if we see that the effect of that on the pitch. But the truth of the matter is, you have to accept that we will never get back where we want to be if that doesn't happen. It will not be solved just by buying new players. It will not be solved just by buying new players. We need enough of them. We need a few of them. We need good ones, which is why it's important, I think, that we stick by moves like Mbumo, that we stick by moves like Cunha, that we do those types of things to ensure that we get players who do make an impact and help us score some goals and win some games, because there is a lack of quality that you can't get away from, especially in the goal scoring department. There is no doubt about that. But we will have to see it. If we don't see, guys like Dorgu, Ugarte, Xerxes, Delict, etc. get better next season, if we don't see them improve, we're in trouble. There's no amount of transfers that are going to solve that. There are no amount of transfers that are going to solve that. You understand? Because what it means is when new players arrive, they will also fail. Most of those are new players. They will also fail. And we've seen signals of it. We've seen signals of it. Guys like Aiden Heaven coming in and kicking on. We've seen how Lenny Yoro, like I said before, that's why I think you could start to see it towards the end of the season that there was a change. You see players improving. You've seen players getting better and better who've taken the time to adjust. I don't think any of the new players who came in got worse, bar injuries. I don't think any of the new players got worse as the season went on. I think they all started getting better and better and improving. So that's what we'll have to see. It's just the truth. And again, from everything I hear, though there's a frustration. Again, they're two separate topics. We need transfers, and this can be true at the same time. This I feel very positive about. And it also creates the environment that new transfers will succeed in. None of it is to say we don't need the new transfers. None of it is to say that their job is not to deliver new players of quality to United. That's their job. If they don't get that done, then they have failed in their job as a part of this alignment, as a part of everybody being on the same page, as a part of this push in the same direction. They have to accomplish that. They have to get the transfers done. Of course, that's a part of this of accomplishing this. So it's not separate to any of this, but the other aspects have to improve too. The fact is, United with the players that are there should be significantly better. Shouldn't be in the position that they're in now. But there's also a severe lack of quality that helps bring you from even where we should be with the players we have to where we should be as a club, given the budget, given the money, given the history, given everything. So, there's two parts to this, that's what has to happen. And then look, the negativity is understood, but again, it's like you have to get where it came from. The thing with the whole finishing in 15th, it shouldn't be a surprise. The season before that, we should have finished in 15th. We should have. By all the numbers, we should have finished in 15th. We got bailed out by unrepeatable actions, irreversible, things that you cannot rely on those things happening to win games. We should have finished in 15th the year before. The direction was so bad and everything was heading so poorly, it shouldn't have even been a surprise. That's where we ended up. And we had some of the players who had carried us previously declining so much or leaving that adding new players wasn't enough even to make up for it, all at the same time. And, it's understanding why we ended up in that position. You take Rashford's goals out of Ten Hag's first season, it's maybe a 7th, 8th place finish that season and heading in a bad direction after that League Cup final. That's the truth of it. And so when he didn't, when he had that downturn in the second season, you could see it all over the place. Exactly what happened. And it is funny because Onana was amazing in Ten Hag's second season. He was incredible. If Onana hadn't been literally statistically maybe one of the best keepers in the Premier League at saving goals, we would have probably ended up 15th. If McTominay hadn't won us like 12 points with stoppage time goals, then we wouldn't have ended up, in that position. It's like it was that bad. So it shouldn't have been a surprise. And like I said, that's why I say it. To me, it's very clear that it's been identified. It's been identified why we ended up in that position. It had been coming for multiple years. It was multiple years of decisions that got there. So it's not a surprise. It wasn't created and caused by the last 12 months. It was everything leading up to and including that period of time. And now we have to claw out of it. But I think that it's been well identified, and I think that the right actions have been taken to fix it. And I'm quite confident in all of it. So we'll see, we'll see. But yeah, regardless, let's see where we go from here, guys. Obviously, there is of course the matter that we have to deliver on these transfers. Of course, the matter we have to deliver on these transfers. Mbumo is not dead. It's not off. It's not anything. He's not due back now till Monday next week. But ideally, there's some conversations that occur this week to sort that out. We still are pushing to get him on. We'll see what happens on some of these sales and things like that. But it's going to be difficult. It's going to be a bit of a fight on the outs. There is no doubt about that. But they've got to deliver in getting Mbumo over the line. No doubt about that. So on we go. That much is true as well. We can't go to the U.S. with one new player only. We have to do better than that. We have to do better than that. No doubt. We have to do better than that. So, all right, guys, I'm gonna end it there. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out. It's wild. The last like 10 minutes since removing certain people has been much more nice in the chat, much more calm, a lot less arguing. Everybody can be more on the same page, feel better, positive environment. Amazing how that works. Thanks for hanging out, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good evening.